Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Yet another episode of Crushing Fantasy Football. I am Bryce Lockridge, your host of the show. All right, guys, today I have a list here of key adjustments that you need to make to your fantasy team immediately because they're going to be very beneficial for you. So I'm going to get right into it. The first thing on my list, and that is if any of the following players are on the waiver wire: George Pickens, Alec Pierce, Mike Boone, Corey Davis, or Isaiah Pacheco. You need to go ahead and grab these guys immediately. Look, George Pickens had a very good rapport with Kenny Pickett this past week. He had 100 receiving yards. I think that this guy has the most raw talent in this wide receiver room, even more so than Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson. That's a bold statement considering how good of a wide receiver Deontay Johnson is. But I think that George Pickens has serious upside as an NFL wide receiver. And it looks like Kenny Pickett is not afraid to chuck the ball downfield to George Pickens. This is a very good sign. The target depth looks good for George Pickens. He's third in the league in average depth of target. So he's getting targeted downfield. He has the potential to produce great yardage totals for you. Alec Pierce, he looks like he is developing a very good rapport with Matt Ryan. So this is a very good sign. I mean, he could end up being just as big of a target hog as Michael Pittman Jr. This is very good. Mike Boone is going to get a decent opportunity share in the Broncos backfield. Corey Davis has been a sneaky producer. He's actually been pretty darn good in the Jets wide receiver room. And Isaiah Pacheco, he's electric. I wouldn't be surprised if he started getting a decent opportunity share in the Chiefs backfield, thus providing decent yardage totals upside and some touchdown upside as well because he's in a very high-scoring offense. So all of these guys are going to be very beneficial for your fantasy team. I would go ahead and grab them while you have the chance before your window of opportunity closes. A ton of these guys, almost all of them are on the waiver wire in a significant amount of ESPN leagues. Go grab these guys for your fantasy team. They're going to be very beneficial in the long run. Next, if you do not have one of the top quarterbacks, right, it is time to go ahead and start streaming a quarterback, right? Because it's been shown that, like if you have one of the quarterbacks that we waited on, like Matt Stafford, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers. These are quarterbacks that, we didn't draft super early, but we might have drafted, somewhere between picks 70 and 120 in the draft overall. And all of these guys that we waited on that were supposed to be those money picks that we waited on and, performed just as well as some of the, quarterbacks that were drafted really early, they've all been absolutely terrible. I mean, they've been awful. Russell Wilson has been a joke. Aaron Rodgers has not been good whatsoever. Kirk Cousins really isn't performing that well as far as overall fantasy output. A lot of these guys have been very disappointing. So it's time to go ahead and start playing the matchups at the quarterback position. Guys like Jared Goff, Zach Wilson, Geno Smith. These are guys that, given the right matchup, they now have significantly more fantasy value than the studs that we drafted. So we've been patient enough with our stud quarterbacks. They're not performing. It's time to go ahead and put them on our bench. Okay, we've waited long enough. Okay, put these guys on your bench. Go ahead and play the quarterbacks that have the smash matchup because we saw it last week with Jared Goff and Geno Smith. Given the right matchup, these guys could be more valuable than the stud that you drafted. If you don't have like one of the top 5 quarterbacks like a Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, obviously you're going to be starting those guys. But if you don't have one of those top guys, it's better to play the matchup at the quarterback position because it's shown to produce more fantasy points. So next on my list is if you really need wide receiver help. It's a great buy low opportunity right now on Keenan Allen, Jamar Chase, Drake London, Amari Cooper, and Chris Godwin. All of these guys are so attainable in the trade market right now. It's not even funny. Keenan Allen, we know, gives you tremendous PPR upside on a week-to-week basis. It looks like he's a little bit banged up right now. He's been on and off the field all season long, but that's exactly why he's a great buy low. I don't think people trust him to stay healthy, but if this guy does come back and he's actually on the field consistently, he provides you tremendous fantasy upside in PPR formats. We know that this is one of the biggest target hogs in all of fantasy. And right now, he's actually attainable in the trade market. Jamar Chase, one of the best wide receivers in the league, is attainable because he's busted 3 weeks in a row. If he goes off in week 5, you're going to lose your window to get Jamar Chase, guys. You have to buy low on him right now. Also, Drake London had a bust week this past week, but it looks like he's a significant target hog in the Falcons offense. I love him as a buy low. Amari Cooper is coming off a bust week. We know that given the right matchup, Amari Cooper has a tremendously high weekly ceiling. He's been that way his entire career. Very boomer bust, but he does have a tremendously high weekly ceiling, so grab him if you can. And Chris Godwin, who is by far a better buy low than any other wide receiver on this list because when Chris Godwin gets going, he can be a top 10 wide receiver in all of fantasy, right? Led in, by a Tom Brady-led offense, significantly talented wide receiver that has great run after the catch abilities. Right now, he's been on and off the field with injuries. That is exactly why he's a great buy low right now. People might be willing to sell him because they haven't seen him do anything in a while. They might not trust him to stay on the field. But if this guy does stay on the field, he has massive league-winning upside. Buy low on Chris Godwin right now while you have the chance. All right, next on my list is you need to go ahead and stream a defense, okay? So when it comes to defense, right, it's more important to play the matchups than it is at any other position, right? Like most positions, you're going to play your stud regardless of the matchup over a player that's significantly less talented. But when it comes to defense, I would rather play a significantly less talented defense than my starting defense if they're going up against a struggling offense. For example, the Jacksonville Jaguars playing up against the Houston Texans and the Minnesota Vikings playing up against the Chicago Bears. Now, the Jacksonville defense has been really good this year, but they're not rostered in a lot of leagues because they're really not known as a talented defense. But they've actually been really good, and they're playing up against the Houston Texans, who are always a struggling offense, very mistake-prone, very turnover-prone. I think that Jacksonville is going to be one of the best defenses on the week, so go ahead and stream the Jacksonville defense. The Minnesota Vikings going up against the Chicago Bears. Look, the Minnesota Vikings have been one of the worst defenses in the league this year, but up against the Chicago Bears, who are absolutely helpless to move the ball, give me the Minnesota Vikings all day. They're going to tear up the Chicago offense, and due to the matchup, they're a great streaming option. So the moral of the story is, if you have a great streaming option at defense, play them over your starting defense because it's been shown to be more profitable and to get you more fantasy points. Next and final thing that I have here on my list is you need to go ahead and start preparing for bye weeks now. Look, the bye weeks are coming up. This is the last week until week 12 where there's not a bye week. Okay, so, week 6, we have a bye week. Week 7, the Bills, the Rams, the Vikings, and the Eagles have a bye week in week 7. Think about how many significant fantasy studs have a bye week in week 7. There's a ton of them. So with that being the case, you need to go ahead and start preparing for bye weeks now. I mean, what are you going to do to replace Cooper Kupp in week 7? Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Jefferson. All these guys are on bye in week 7. So, it's very hard to find someone to replace these guys with that is going to get you the same amount of fantasy points that they would. But the goal is to find a player that's going to give you, at best case scenario, 75 to 80% of the fantasy output that this player would normally get you. So whether you have that player on your bench or whether you need to grab them off the waiver wire in the trade market, start planning for it now. Don't be that guy that's caught, not prepared in week 7 when your stud is on the bench and then ends up making an excuse that, Cooper Kupp was out. That's the only reason you beat me. Nope, that's your fault. You have to prepare for the bye weeks now. And if you're not ready, that's on you. So prepare for the bye weeks. All right, guys, appreciate you tuning in the video, and I will catch you later.